time of the year is it? That's right, football season. This is my favorite time of the year. Around the League states in an article by Greg Rosenthal entitled Poll, Record Number of Americans Follow Pro Football, that a record high 59% of Americans watch pro football. Not only does this mark the beginning of the NFL season though, it marks the beginning of fantasy football. I will inform you about the origin of fantasy football, the different types of leagues, and what a fantasy football season is like. I would consider myself rather accustomed to fantasy football. I have played in different types of leagues for the past 6 years now, and I have won twice. Every league that I've played in, I have enjoyed it very much. I will inform you about the 3 aspects of fantasy football. First, I will explain the origin of fantasy football. Second, I will explain the different types of leagues that there are. And lastly, I will describe what a fantasy football season is like. I will begin with the origin. The origin of fantasy football is actually quite interesting. How Stuff Works states in an article by Matt Hunt entitled How Fantasy Football Works that the origin started in 1962 in New York. A man called Wilfred Winkenbach along with Raiders public relations man Bill Tunnell and Tribune reporter Scotty Starling were in a New York hotel room. The 3 men were on an Eastern cross-country trip. In the hotel room, the men developed a system of organization and the official rule book. This would eventually become the basis of the modern fantasy football. As stated in the original rules, the purpose was, quote, to bring together some of Oakland's finest gridiron forecasters to pit their brains against each other, hoping that it would lead to, quote, closer coverage of daily happenings in professional football. All of this led to the first public fantasy football league at the King's X Sports Bar in 1969. Ever since then, fantasy football has become more and more popular. Now that you know a little bit about the origin, let's move on to the different types of leagues that there are. Fantasy football has many different types of leagues. On SB Nation, Alex Welch discusses the different types of leagues in an article entitled Fantasy Football 101, Different Types of Leagues. He says that regardless of the website you use, such as NFL.com, ESPN.com, and Yahoo.com, for example, all of them have the same 4 different types of leagues. The first type of league is a redraft league. In this league, the owners start from scratch every single season. And the rosters are drafted in a snake order, which means if you have the first pick of the first round, you will then have the last pick of the second round. The second type of league is an auction league. Instead of having a snake order of picks, owners start with a set amount of money that they can spend and bid on players. Any owner can bid at any time as long as they have enough money to buy the player. The third type of league is a keeper league. Keeper simply means that you can have a certain amount of you can keep a certain amount of players going on into the next year. For example, let's say your league says you can keep 2 players. So for the next year, you would keep the best 2 players on your team. However, it is up to your commissioner and your league members on what the actual official rules of the keeper league is. The last type of league is called a dynasty league. In a dynasty league, owners can keep an entire roster for the next season. These leagues can keep most or even all of the players on their team. And this forces owners to think about the future when they decide picking on their players. So if you start this league up, the first draft will need to be the focus on setting up your team for long-term success. Now that you know the different types of leagues, let's move on to what playing a season is actually like. Playing in a fantasy football season can be very much fun. Once the draft is done, your team is ready, and the first week is ready to begin, this is where it all starts. You will have a league with between 8 to 16 teams, and every week you will have a different opponent. The regular season consists of 13 to 14 weeks long. Your goal is to win as many games as you possibly can to get into the playoffs. The playoffs usually last from week 14 to week 16, and then occasionally can go all the way up to week 17. Once you make the playoffs, this is where the real fun begins. Your league may or may not have a prize, but regardless of the prize, all you want to do is win. Some types of prizes you could consider are trophies, money, or you could even throw a party for the winner. There's nothing better than winning, though. This gives you bragging rights for the whole entire off-season going into the next season. So that includes the three aspects of fantasy football. With the information I've provided today, you can share the origin with your friends and family, know and understand the 4 different types of leagues that there are, and play and enjoy a fantasy football season. If you have some extra time on your hands and you want a new hobby, you really can't go wrong with fantasy football. It is a very fun and enjoyable thing to do.